Our relationship began 5 years ago in what felt like a fairy tale romance. We met through mutual friends, and from the very beginning, there was an undeniable spark between us. Our early years together were filled with love, laughter, and dreams for the future. I remember the long nights spent talking about our aspirations and the excitement of building a life together. When we got married, 2 years after meeting, it was one of the happiest days of my life. The ceremony was intimate, surrounded only by our closest friends and family. She looked radiant, and the way she gazed at me made me feel like the luckiest man in the world. In those moments, I couldn't imagine a future without her by my side. We soon decided we wanted to start a family. A year into our marriage, we began trying to have a baby. It was an exciting yet slightly stressful period, but we shared every moment, supporting each other through every step of the journey. When we finally learned we were going to be parents, it was an indescribable joy. Each ultrasound, every kick from the baby, was a marvel to us. The birth of our son was nothing short of a miracle. That day in the hospital, as I held our little one for the first time, I felt an overwhelming surge of love, so powerful that I thought my heart might burst. My wife, exhausted but happy, was beaming, and I couldn't stop looking at them both in awe. We were embarking on a new adventure as a family. However, as the months passed, doubts began to creep in. It wasn't immediate, but there was something about our son's appearance that made me question. His skin was darker than I had expected, and his hair had a texture and curl that didn't match our genes. I tried to rationalize it, reminding myself that genetics can be unpredictable, and that a child's appearance doesn't always mirror their parents exactly. But these doubts didn't fade away. I often found myself looking at our son, trying to see a reflection of us in him. His smile, his bright eyes were all beautiful. But increasingly, I felt they didn't align with ours. This led to a conversation with my wife shortly after his birthday. I sought clarity, a confirmation that my fears weren't unfounded. Her response was defensive, something I had never experienced in our relationship before. I felt that my innocent question had unleashed a storm of emotions I hadn't anticipated. I tried to calm the situation, downplaying my concerns, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. Feeling desperate for answers, I made a drastic decision. Conducting a paternity test without her knowledge was impulsive, but I felt I needed to know the truth to move forward. When the results arrived, I was paralyzed. I wasn't the biological father of our son. The truth was a devastating blow, a reality I didn't know how to confront. In that moment, I felt utterly lost. My love for my son hadn't changed, but the revelation altered my perception of our family. Every time I looked at him, I felt a mixture of love and sorrow. How could I love someone so deeply and yet feel so betrayed at the same time? My mind was in constant turmoil, trying to reconcile these conflicting emotions. I spent a lot of time reflecting on how we had reached this point. I replayed moments from our relationship, searching for signs of infidelity, trying to understand how and when it had happened. But I couldn't find any clues. Our life together had always been transparent, sharing our locations, maintaining an open and loving relationship. There were no indications of deceit, which made it all more confusing. I recalled our attempts to conceive, our joy when we found out we were going to be parents. I never imagined that during that time, something could have gone so wrong. Each moment of happiness was now tinged with uncertainty and pain. Despite everything, I couldn't stop loving my wife. Every time I thought about confronting her, I felt a rush of emotions: anger, sadness, love, and confusion. How could I accuse her of something so serious without having all the answers? How could I destroy the life we had built together? Yet, at the same time, I knew I couldn't live with this hidden truth. I decided I needed to talk to someone, seek advice. I didn't know how to start this conversation with my wife, nor how to deal with my own feelings. I wanted someone to help me see things clearly, to find a way to handle this situation without tearing our family apart. The night before I finally decided to talk to her, I sat alone in our living room, looking through photos of our life together. I saw pictures of our wedding, the vacations we had shared, the happy and carefree moments before these doubts took hold of me. Each photo reminded me of how much we had shared and how hard it would be to let it all go. The next day, when my wife returned from work, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I asked her to sit down with me, and I saw a mixture of curiosity and concern in her eyes. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told her about my doubts, about the paternity test, and how it had affected my perspective. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of my life. She listened in silence as I spoke, and when I finished, there was a long pause. Finally, she looked at me and began to talk. Her words were a mix of apologies, explanations, and promises of love. She admitted to making a mistake, a lapse during a moment of weakness. She hadn't planned it, didn't know how she had let it happen, and had been overwhelmed by guilt ever since. Her confession left me stunned. Everything I had thought and felt over those weeks came crashing down in ways I didn't expect. I felt a mix of relief at finally knowing the truth and profound sadness at the betrayal. Despite everything, as she spoke, I saw in her eyes the same love I had seen on our wedding day. It wasn't easy to accept what had happened, but in that moment, I knew that although our relationship had changed forever, there was still something worth fighting for. I can't say that I know exactly what will happen from here on out. I'm still processing everything and trying to find a way to move forward. The only thing I know is that I love my son, and no matter what, he will always be a part of my life. I also know that despite the betrayal, I still have deep feelings for my wife. This journey won't be easy, and there will be many challenges ahead, but I'm determined to face these challenges, hoping that somehow we can find a way to rebuild our life together and move forward, stronger and more aware of what true love and forgiveness mean.